Hello there, and welcome to All About Earth, the little corner of the cosmos, where questions drift slowly and wonder is allowed to breathe. Tonight, before we wander too far into mystery, let's begin simply. Take a breath, in and out. Let the day slide off your shoulders. Where are you right now? Curled beneath a warm blanket, resting on a soft couch that remembers your shape, or maybe outside under a dome of quiet stars, their light taking millions of years to find you here in this exact moment. Wherever you are, I'm glad you've arrived, because tonight's question isn't about what we've built. It's about what we are. You see, there's a thought that's been whispering through the halls of imagination and science alike. What if humanity isn't the first story written on this world? What if, instead, we are what remains? Not ruins or relics, but the quiet continuation of something Earth once knew and then let go. What if life itself is the memory of a civilization, long dissolved, its essence reborn through time, cell by cell, until one day it began to wonder again? It's not a claim, just an invitation to think differently about what it means to be new, because maybe we are not the beginning, but the echo of a much older song, one that the Earth has been humming beneath our feet since before names were spoken. So as you settle in, let your thoughts slow to the rhythm of tides and stars. Feel the weight of the blankets, or the coolness of the night air. Let curiosity be the only thing you hold. And if this kind of slow wonder feels like home, if the thought of being part of an ancient, ever-renewing mystery brings you peace, you can always share this moment. Leave a like, a thought, or a quiet subscription. It helps this little signal drift farther, toward others, searching for their own calm corner of the universe. Now, close your eyes, or don't. We're about to follow a trail, not through ruins or stone, but through the living memory of the planet itself. Because maybe, just maybe, we are what the first civilization left behind. If Earth were a storyteller, it would also be its own editor, and a ruthless one at that. The planet does not keep diaries, it rewrites them. Every mountain, every plain, every ocean floor you see is a draft, a version of a version, endlessly revised. What we call deep time isn't just a record of what has happened, it's also the slow, deliberate erasure of what once was. Continents don't stay still. They drift like slow rafts across a molten sea, colliding, shattering, and recombining over spans so vast that human imagination almost gives up trying to picture it. The plates beneath us move only a few centimeters a year, the pace of a growing fingernail, but over millions of years. That steady crawl rearranges the face of the planet. Mountains rise where oceans once rolled, valleys open where peaks once pierced the clouds. If you could watch it in fast motion, Earth would look alive, flexing, breathing, swallowing its past. When two continental plates collide, they crumple upward, building mountain ranges like the Himalayas, dramatic reminders of slow violence. But mountains are temporary too, despite their arrogance. The very forces that raise them also begin, immediately, to grind them down. Wind, rain, ice, roots and time. Together they act like a soft army of sculptors, carving the peaks into soil, then dust, then sediment. Given enough time, even Everest will bow its head and join the plain. Earth's default mode is not permanence, but change. Beneath the continents lies an even more efficient destroyer, the ocean floor. Most of it is younger than the dinosaurs. The oldest seafloor we know is roughly 200 million years old, practically brand new in geological terms. That's because the oceans are not static basins, they're conveyor belts of rock. Along the mid-ocean ridges, molten material rises from below, forming new crust that slowly spreads outward. As it moves, it cools, thickens, and eventually meets its end in deep ocean trenches, where it's dragged back into the mantle, melted, mixed, recycled. The process is called subduction, and it's Earth's great cleanup mechanism. Imagine that, the entire surface of the ocean floor being erased and rewritten every 200 million years. That means if an ancient civilization once built cities along a coastline long before humans, those coastlines and their evidence would be gone, swallowed whole. The planet doesn't keep clutter. It tidies itself like a compulsive cosmic minimalist. Even the continents, though older and more durable, don't escape the cycle. They too get weathered, stretched, swallowed, and reborn. Parts of Africa and Australia contain rocks more than 3 billion years old, but those are rare survivors, the stubborn elders who escaped the recycling furnace. Most of Earth's crust has been melted and remade countless times. It's as if the planet periodically looks down at its own surface, sighs, and decides to start over. To the human mind, used to centuries and millennia, this behavior is almost inconceivable. We build monuments and call them eternal, carve names into stone and assume they'll last. Yet to Earth, 1,000 years is a blink, a sigh, a brief moment between tectonic shifts. Our cities, even our great empires, are written on pages the planet intends to reuse. If you think of time as a river, then geology is the current that erases footprints as soon as they're made. The deeper the current, the smoother the stone. Erosion doesn't just wear down the landscape, it smooths memory itself. Every rainfall is a kind of editing, every earthquake, a rearrangement of sentences, every volcanic eruption, a red pen scrawled across an old line. This brings us, quietly, to a thought once whispered in scientific circles and now known, half seriously, as the Silurian hypothesis, named after a race of intelligent reptiles from an old British science fiction show. The real idea, proposed by two scientists in 2018, isn't about alien lizards, but about geology's capacity for forgetting. Suppose, they asked, there had once been an industrial civilization millions of years before ours. Would we even know? The sobering answer, probably not. Think of what our own civilization would leave behind if time rolled forward a few million years. Our buildings, our metals, our plastics, all the symbols of modernity, are fragile in the language of geology. Exposed to air, water, and microbes, metals corrode, plastics break down into invisible fragments, then decay into chemical ghosts, concrete crumbles into dust, brick returns to clay, and glass becomes sand again. Even bones, those hard poetic markers of existence, dissolve unless quickly buried and mineralized. And the odds of fossilization are, frankly, terrible. Fossils form only under very specific conditions: rapid burial, mineral replacement, protection from erosion, and luck. Lots of luck. Most living things never fossilize. They rot, scatter, vanish. In the same way, the artifacts of any advanced civilization would mostly be erased long before the next one arrived to look. So what, if anything, could endure? Perhaps not structures, but signatures, chemical scars etched into the planet's memory. The Silurian hypothesis suggests that the only lasting traces of an ancient industrial age might be found not in stone ruins, but in the chemistry of the rocks themselves. Anomalies in carbon isotopes, for instance, or unusual concentrations of heavy metals like lead and chromium, traces of manufacturing, combustion, and pollution. A sudden spike in greenhouse gases recorded in ancient sediments might look suspiciously like our own Anthropocene fingerprints. Imagine scientists in some distant future, millions of years after us, drilling into rock and finding a narrow layer rich in carbon soot and synthetic molecules. They might call it a carbon spike, a brief chemical anomaly hinting that something once burned bright and then went out. They'd never find our cities, those would have long melted into the mantle. But they might find the faint residue of our chemistry, the ghost of our industry. In a way, it's comforting. Earth forgets faces and names, but keeps emotional traces, like a dream that lingers after waking. The Earth is in essence a recycler. It does not like clutter or permanence. Even fossils, those lucky survivors, are few and scattered. A spotty diary written in mineral ink. The geological record is full of missing pages, places where time itself seems to skip. Entire epochs may be buried under newer layers, or erased altogether by erosion and tectonic upheaval. These gaps aren't just empty, they're active erasures, deliberate absences, sculpted by physics and chemistry. When you stand on a beach, looking out at the horizon, you're standing on the edge of amnesia. The waves lapping at your feet are grinding continents into sand. The seabed beneath them is creeping away, destined to vanish into the planet's depths. Even the air you breathe participates in the forgetting, carrying moisture that wears down stone, fueling storms that reshape coastlines, rusting the very metals we use to mark our presence. And yet, for all this cosmic cleaning, Earth doesn't erase everything equally. A few ancient minerals, zircon crystals, for example, have survived since the planet's infancy. They're like tiny, indestructible time capsules, older than continents, older even than the moon's final formation, but they're exceptions, scattered and silent. For the most part, the planet's archive is a work perpetually in progress, its older chapters buried beneath newer ones, their meanings rewritten by the heat and pressure of time. It's humbling to realize how little survives. The oldest ocean crust is younger than the first mammals. The surface of Mars has been more stable than Earth's. On our planet, permanence is an illusion, a trick of human scale. What feels solid today is just a brief arrangement of minerals waiting to be rearranged. So when the Silurian hypothesis wonders whether an ancient civilization could have risen and vanished before us, it's not really a claim of conspiracy. It's a study of humility. Earth is simply too good at forgetting. Its tectonic metabolism erases evidence faster than any species can record it. Even the continents themselves drift like memory, colliding, merging, dissolving, as if acting out the slow forgetting of their own stories. Picture the world as it might have been 100 million years ago. The continents in different places, the oceans unrecognizable. Now picture that same world, another 100 million years before that. Every map you can imagine is temporary. Every boundary, every mountain range is just a passing thought in the mind of a restless planet. In this grand geological cycle, even extinction feels like punctuation. A pause, a breath, before the next paragraph begins. The surface wipes itself clean, and life's stubborn, adaptable life starts again, building on what's left, unaware of what came before. Maybe it's always been this way, civilizations rising like waves, each one erasing the evidence of the last, leaving only faint ripples in the chemistry of stone. It's tempting to see malice or intention in this, but the truth is simpler and stranger. Earth doesn't erase out of cruelty. It erases because that's what it does. It transforms. Rock becomes magma. Magma becomes crust. Crust becomes dust. Dust becomes rock again. It's a circle that's been spinning for billions of years. Patient, merciless, beautiful. So if our world once held other dreamers, beings who mapped their stars, built their cities, sang their songs, they are long gone, folded back into the mantle, recycled into mountains and rain. The ocean floor that once might have held their ports or their machines has been swallowed and remade. The continents that bore their footprints scattered into new configurations. Their monuments, if they existed, are now atoms in our bones. Earth, in the end, is the great equalizer. It forgets everything except motion. And motion is what keeps it alive. Maybe that's the real secret of the Silurian hypothesis. Not that we'll find evidence of ancient civilizations, but that the very act of searching reminds us how fragile permanence really is. We build, we write, we imagine ourselves lasting forever, but the ground beneath us is already making plans to start over. And perhaps somewhere deep in the mantle, those plans are already underway. The next version of the world quietly forming, ready to rise, clean and new, when time decides to turn the page again. Because here on this endlessly self-renewing planet, even memory becomes geology, and geology in time becomes silence. If you listen closely, the rocks are not silent. They murmur in slow frequencies, the language of pressure and patience. They've seen everything. Oceans born and drained, mountains lifted and leveled, creatures come and gone. They hold the memory of the planet itself. But like any old storyteller, they can be tricky. They mix fact with poetry, chemistry with coincidence. Sometimes what they whisper looks almost like a secret. Every so often, someone finds something that doesn't quite fit. A small object, a curious pattern, a twist of metal or mineral that seems too deliberate for nature. These are the curiosities that make geologists sigh and dreamers lean forward. They sit in museum drawers and private collections, between explanation and imagination. The strange artifacts of maybe, take for instance the so-called Klerksdorp spheres, smooth, metallic-looking objects, some grooved with perfect parallel lines, found in pyrophyllite deposits near Ottersdal, South Africa. The rocks they came from are dated to nearly 3 billion years old. That's 3,000 million years long before trees, fish, or anything resembling civilization. And yet the spheres appear shaped, almost engineered, as if some ancient hand had polished them for reasons lost to time. The first time these spheres were shown publicly, they caused a quiet storm. Some claimed they were proof of a forgotten technology, or at least an intelligence predating ours. Others, more grounded in geology, explained them as natural concretions, mineral growths formed when iron and pyrite crystallize around a core, shaped by pressure and slow chemical reactions. The ridges and grooves, they said, are the fingerprints of metamorphism, not craftsmanship. Case closed, scientifically speaking. And yet, the mystery lingers, because while the explanation fits the data, the objects themselves don't quite lose their enchantment. You can hold one in your hand, a little orb of ancient metal, heavy and smooth, and feel the tension between certainty and wonder. Even if you know the chemistry, it's hard not to feel like you're holding a message written in a forgotten alphabet. Nature, after all, has a way of making art before artists existed. Then there are the microspirals, tiny, coiled metal shapes discovered in the 1990s in river sediments across parts of the Ural Mountains and western Siberia. They're microscopic, some less than 1/10 of a millimeter wide, shaped like perfect spirals or screws. The smaller ones are made of tungsten and molybdenum, metals that melt only at extremely high temperatures. Their structure, according to those who studied them, looks almost machined, too regular, too uniform. To date, the sediments where they were found are estimated to be tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years old, far older than the known history of metallurgy. The official explanations range from fragments of modern industrial equipment dropped and washed into the soil to peculiar crystal formations that mimic human engineering. The idea of ancient nanotechnology is, to put it mildly, not widely endorsed in scientific journals. Still, the mind resists dismissal. The human brain is an engine built for pattern seeking. It cannot help but see design in symmetry, intention in precision. When you gaze at one of those microscopic spirals, metal curled like DNA, buried in ancient ground, some part of you whispers, "What if?" That's the delicate dance between science and story. The evidence says nature is a capable sculptor, but curiosity, that old and restless companion, asks whether we've yet learned to recognize every tool she uses. There are more of these curiosities scattered through time. The London hammer, a 19th century style tool said to have been found embedded in rock, estimated to be over 100 million years old. The Dorchester vessel, a bell-shaped metallic pot, allegedly blasted out of solid stone during a 19th century explosion, and countless lesser-known anomalies, imprints, markings, fragments of something that seems almost familiar, all preserved in layers of stone far older than anything human. Skeptics, of course, have good reasons to hesitate. Geological processes can mimic intent with eerie accuracy. Concretions can form spheres that look carved. Fossilized burrows can appear as tubes. Pyrite can grow in cubes so perfect they could pass for manufacture. And nature has been shaping metal, carbon, and crystal far longer than civilization has existed. Given enough time, water and pressure can produce results that would make a blacksmith blink. Still, even geologists sometimes admit to moments of pause, because now and then, nature overdoes it, creates something so precise, so strangely aesthetic, that the imagination rebels. A rock shaped like a gear, a pattern of hexagons etched into basalt, perfectly aligned spheres scattered in ancient strata. Logic tells us these are coincidences, but logic and awe often travel different roads, and that's where the magic lies, not in proving the extraordinary, but in standing at its edge and wondering. What if Earth does keep secrets, just not in the ways we expect? What if the planet itself is the vault, and these oddities are the glimmers that leak through the cracks? Little reminders that the surface of things is only half the story, because when you look at the rocks closely, really closely, you start to see how alive they are. Under a microscope, mineral crystals form networks and lattices that could rival the circuitry of our most intricate machines. Quartz fibers intertwine like frozen threads of light. Iron patterns twist into spirals that echo galaxies. It's easy, perhaps too easy, to imagine intent behind it all. Some scientists have joked, half in jest, half in awe, that if aliens ever visited Earth billions of years ago and left a calling card, we'd never know. Their monuments would be long gone, their cities melted, Their tools dissolved into atoms. Maybe they'd leave only an idea, a pattern, a seed of structure. Maybe that's what we find when we stumble upon something that looks too deliberate, not proof, but poetry. Take the Klerksdorp spheres again. Most are no bigger than a golf ball. Some are smooth, others grooved, some perfectly balanced enough to roll on a glass surface. They sit behind museum glass now, labeled and categorized. The mystery politely contained, but their existence still hums with possibility. They came from a world so ancient it barely resembles our own. Back then, the atmosphere was thick with methane. The seas were iron-rich and alien. Volcanoes lit up the horizon. Life was microbial, if it existed at all. So who or what shaped those spheres? Most likely, no one. Nature did it, while she was still practicing. But it's equally possible that our assumptions about what no one means are limited by what we recognize as life or intelligence. Perhaps the idea of civilization shouldn't always conjure cities and tools. Perhaps a civilization could be chemical, microbial, or geological, a network of reactions that learned to organize itself long before we did. If such a thing ever existed, maybe its traces would look exactly like this: structured, patterned, but not quite alive. That thought alone is enough to keep the mystery breathing. Because even if the explanations are natural, the implications remain enormous. The Earth, through time, has been an artist of astonishing skill. It can carve, forge, and shape with precision that rivals intention. But once in a while it leaves something that feels like a wink, a tiny anomaly, a whisper that says, "There's more to me than you think." When you walk through a geological museum, the stones are labeled with neat names: hematite, siderite, pyrophyllite, quartz. But what they represent is chaos made orderly, the frozen remnants of heat and pressure, doing their slow, elegant dance. Somewhere in those galleries of minerals and fossils, perhaps, lies one piece that doesn't quite belong, something whose symmetry or material whispers of a story too strange to file under igneous or sedimentary. And that's where imagination enters the lab. Science is built on questions, not certainties, and every anomaly, no matter how neatly explained, deserves at least one night of wonder. Because if the planet is capable of producing such perfect riddles naturally, then nature herself may be far more inventive than we give her credit for. Maybe that's the point. These mysterious objects are not proof of forgotten civilizations, but invitations to think bigger. They remind us that the line between artificial and natural isn't as sharp as we imagine. Both are born of pattern, energy, and time. The difference is only one of awareness, and perhaps in the grand view of Earth's 4.5 billion years, even that is temporary. The idea that ancient technology could vanish completely might seem far-fetched, but so is the idea that nature alone can sculpt such intricate perfection. The truth, as always, probably lives somewhere in between, in that twilight zone where science meets metaphor and where rocks become storytellers. A geologist might look at a 3 billion-year-old iron sphere and see a geochemical process. A philosopher might see a message in mineral form. A dreamer might see a breadcrumb from a forgotten epoch. And maybe all three are right, because the beauty of mystery is that it can hold multiple truths without collapsing. Perhaps the Earth does hide its past deliberately, not out of malice, but for balance, revealing just enough to keep curiosity alive. Maybe that's why we find these peculiar hints: a polished sphere here, a metallic spiral there. They are like sparkles in sediment, glints of mischief in the planet's otherwise serious geology. It's as if the Earth occasionally leans in and whispers, "You're getting warmer. Keep looking, but not too fast." And so we do. We dig, we classify, we debate, we laugh at the wilder theories, but secretly we hope for one more riddle. Because in the end, it's not really about proving the improbable. It's about feeling the thrill of not knowing, of standing on a planet that's been making mysteries longer than we've been making fire. The strange traces in stone, the spheres, the spirals, the impossible impressions may all be perfectly natural, or they may be the faintest echoes of something ancient and intentional. Either way, they remind us that the ground beneath our feet isn't just dirt, it's an archive, a gallery, a puzzle still unfolding. So the next time you pick up a rock, take a moment before you toss it aside, turn it in your hand, notice its texture, its glint, the quiet geometry within. Maybe it's just geology, or maybe, just maybe, it's the planet smiling back at you saying, there are still stories you haven't heard, and in that moment between knowing and wondering, you become part of the story too. Life has never stayed still for long. From the moment the first cell divided in the dark of some primordial sea, the planet has been reinventing itself through its creatures, testing, reshaping, experimenting. Earth's story is not one of straight lines, but of cycles, an endless choreography of birth, flourishing, collapse, and renewal. Across billions of years, life has been both sculptor and sculpture, adapting not only to survive, but to astonish. If we could watch it all in fast motion, the surface of the planet would seem to breathe. Forest would rise like green tides and fall back into the soil. Oceans would glow, fade, and glow again with new species. Wings would appear where once there were fins. Eyes would open where once there was only dark. It would look almost deliberate, as though the planet were dreaming itself into different forms, just to see what it could be. Long before humans, before mammals, even before flowers, there were the fern forests, vast, humid cathedrals of green that towered over the Carboniferous world some 300 million years ago. Imagine standing beneath them, tree ferns as tall as houses, trunks ribbed with intricate spirals, fronds that spread like parasols of living lace. The air was thick, damp, and rich with oxygen, nearly twice what it is today. Every breath would have felt heavy and alive. In that oxygen-rich atmosphere, creatures grew enormous. Dragonflies with wingspans wider than a hawk's drifted through the mist. Millipedes stretched as long as small cars. Amphibians the size of crocodiles lurked among the roots. It was a world where nature seemed intoxicated by its own abundance, a kind of slow-motion carnival of green and gold. And yet it wasn't built to last. The forests that had woven the air into oxygen also laid the groundwork for their own demise. When they died and fell, their trunks didn't rot easily in the oxygen-starved wetlands. Instead, they built up in thick layers of organic matter, layers that under heat and pressure would become coal. The world of ferns gave way to the world of fossils, and out of that quiet burial, the planet prepared for a new act. Next came the age of the reptiles, and with it the age of imagination. The Mesozoic era unfolded like a three-act play of titans: the Triassic dawn, the Jurassic bloom, and the Cretaceous crescendo. For 460 million years, dinosaurs ruled the land with an ease that makes our brief human history look like a spark in the dark. They adapted to every niche: predators, grazers, flyers, swimmers. Some grew to lengths of over 100 feet, others to the size of chickens. Some hunted in packs, others nursed their young. Evolution, given time, turned lizards into empires. If you could have walked through the Jurassic forests, you might have heard the low thunder of sauropods moving through the trees, their footsteps sinking into the soft ground. Above, pterosaurs drifted like living kites, the first vertebrates to master the air, and underfoot, tiny mammals scurried unseen, waiting their turn. Life was busy, restless, unhurried, sculpting its future in plain sight. But no dynasty lasts forever. About 66 million years ago, the curtain fell abruptly. A meteorite struck the Yucatan Peninsula with the force of billions of atomic bombs. The sky darkened, the air burned, and 3/4 of Earth's species vanished. For a while, silence ruled again. Yet even in catastrophe, life was not defeated, only paused. The seeds of new worlds were already stirring in the ashes. From those survivors, the mammals rose, not as conquerors at first, but as opportunists, small, furtive, soft-bodied creatures that thrived in the gaps left by giants. They spread, diversified, and began to dream new biological dreams. Some grew hooves and ran across plains, some took to the air again, as bats, some returned to the sea as whales and dolphins. Others climbed trees, learned to grasp, to see in color, to plan. The planet had turned the page, and intelligence, that flicker of self-awareness, was beginning to glow again. But intelligence, it seems, is not a single invention. It's an idea that nature keeps rediscovering in different forms. Long before humans began asking questions, the ocean had already birthed philosophers. The octopus, with its 8 arms and 3 hearts, carries a mind so alien yet so familiar that scientists sometimes call it the closest thing to an extraterrestrial on Earth. It can solve puzzles, open jars, recognize individuals, and even decorate its den with shells and stones as if aesthetics were not uniquely human after all. Its neurons are not confined to a single brain, but distributed through its body, like thought made fluid. Intelligence in this case is not centralized but embodied, a different kind of awareness, one that flows. Then there are the dolphins, sleek, laughing enigmas that play in the waves and recognize themselves in mirrors. They invent games, teach each other tricks, and seem to understand abstract concepts. In underwater laboratories of light, they pass the mirror test, a measure of self-awareness once thought uniquely ours. When a dolphin looks into its reflection, it pauses, turns, and looks again. You can almost hear the question, "That's me." And the birds, descendants of dinosaurs, heirs to the sky, have shown their own kind of brilliance. Ravens and crows fashion tools from twigs and wire, store food for future use, and even play tricks on one another. Parrots mimic speech not as mimicry alone, but as a form of communication. Magpies recognize themselves, just like dolphins and apes. And the scrub jay, a modest-looking bird from the oak woodlands, can plan for tomorrow, burying food in places it remembers and protecting it from thieves. In its small, feathered skull, time itself becomes an object of thought. Across all these examples, one pattern emerges: intelligence blooms wherever life has enough time to experiment. It's not a straight line toward us, but a fractal of possibilities. Awareness has risen, fallen, and risen again, in shells, in feathers, in fur, in skin that can change color, like living camouflage. The Earth, it seems, is not content with one form of thinking. It keeps trying new versions, as though consciousness were a recurring melody played on different instruments. Even the plants, quiet and slow, have their own strategies. They communicate through chemical signals, warn neighbors of danger, and share nutrients through underground fungal networks. The system so complex, it has been called the Wood Wide Web. In the green silence of forests, cooperation and adaptation are as alive as competition. The ferns that once ruled the Carboniferous world still exist, smaller now, humbler, but persisting like an echo from a different era. Life, it seems, never truly surrenders. It simply shifts shape. If you think of evolution as a language, then extinction is just punctuation. The sentence never ends. It just pauses, rephrases, finds another way to say the same ancient truth. Adapt or fade. For every species that vanishes, others rise to fill the space. Sometimes they repeat old patterns, fins into wings, legs into flippers, as though the planet were rehearsing variations of a favorite theme. Other times, it invents something entirely new, a structure or behavior that changes the course of life forever. There's a quiet rhythm to it all, a pulse that beats through every era. Life expands, diversifies, complicates, and then just as suddenly, it collapses. But even collapse is creative. When the forests of the Carboniferous turned into coal, they set the stage for future ecosystems. When the dinosaurs fell, they left room for mammals to rise. When ice ages swept to the continents, they forced species to migrate, adapt, and innovate. Catastrophe, in Earth's logic, is never just destruction, it's transformation. It's easy to think of evolution as progress, as a ladder leading upward to us. But the more we learn, the less that metaphor fits. Evolution isn't a ladder, it's a web, a branching coral reef of possibilities. We are one branch among countless others, and not necessarily the final one. Intelligence, for all its complexity, is just another adaptation, one that the planet has tried before and will likely try again. The difference between a human solving a problem and an octopus doing the same may be one of form, not essence. Both are manifestations of the same principle, life learning from itself. If the Earth had a voice, perhaps it would say, "Think, if you must, but remember, thought is not yours alone." Across eons, it has encouraged life to experiment with awareness, to find new ways of perceiving and responding. The cephalopod's intuition, the dolphin's curiosity, the birds planning, even the social bonds of elephants, all are echoes of that same planetary invitation to feel, to notice, An adaptation is not only biological, it's aesthetic, emotional, behavioral. A coral reef learns to build architecture from limestone. A desert plant learns to store water and bloom only when it rains. Arctic foxes turn white in winter and brown in summer, becoming the living embodiment of impermanence. Everywhere, the planet teaches flexibility. The rules are simple. The environment changes, and life must dance with it or bow out. From that perspective, extinction isn't failure, it's part of the choreography. When one form ends, another begins, using the remnants as raw material. The great cycles of Earth are not tragedies, but transitions. Life doesn't mourn, it transforms, and in every transformation, a fragment of what came before continues, encoded in DNA, in behavior, in memory written into molecules. That continuity is what binds us to every living thing that ever was. The carbon in our breath once circulated through fern forests, through ammonites and trilobites, through the lungs of dinosaurs. The calcium in our bones may have belonged to the shells of ancient sea creatures. We are literally made of Earth's past experiments. When we think, speak, or dream, we're continuing a dialogue billions of years old, the planet asking itself through us, what can life become next? Even now, that question hasn't stopped. Evolution is ongoing, invisible but relentless. Bacteria adapt to antibiotics. Birds shift their migration routes to match changing climates. Trees adjust their growth patterns in response to temperature. Life remains fluid, inquisitive, unfinished. Perhaps that's its deepest secret. It never considers itself done. So, as we gaze back across deep time, from the fern forests to the reign of dinosaurs, from the cleverness of octopuses to the laughter of dolphins, we can see the same principle at work: adaptability. Life doesn't resist change, it becomes it, and through that endless becoming, the planet keeps learning what it means to be alive. Maybe intelligence itself is just another adaptation, one that blooms wherever conditions allow. Not a human monopoly, but a recurring phenomenon, like flowering, or flight, or song. It rises, fades, and rises again, taking new forms with every age. The Earth, in its quiet patience, seems to whisper, think again, evolve again, there's still more to discover. And so it does. The forests breathe, the oceans shimmer, the skies fill with wings. In every corner of the planet, life continues its conversation with time, a dialogue of resilience, of creativity, of wonder. Each extinction, each rebirth, each spark of thought is part of that vast ongoing experiment. We are part of it too. Not the conclusion, but a verse in a much longer poem. The ferns, the insects, the dinosaurs, the dolphins, the cephalopods, they are all earlier stanzas, written in the same language of adaptation. And someday, other beings will read our chapter, just as we read theirs, and wonder how we lived, what we learned, and how the planet dreamed through us. Because that's what Earth does best. It dreams in biology. It imagines through evolution, and its imagination, vast and ancient, never stops. Civilizations are like waves. They rise from the quiet surface of life, crest into brilliance, and then inevitably break, dissolving back into the sea that bore them. The Earth has seen countless such motions, though we only know a few by name. Others, older and more elusive, may have come and gone without trace, absorbed into the deep rhythm of the planet's becoming. To exist on Earth is to participate in that rhythm, to be both moment and memory, both creation and erasure. It's tempting to think of civilization as progress, a steady climb towards something better, brighter, more complete. But the longer we gaze at history, and at time itself, the more it resembles a circle rather than a line. Forests grow and burn and grow again. Oceans advance and retreat. Species appear, flourish, and fade. The same pattern pulses through human culture: birth, expansion, complexity, collapse, renewal. Each iteration writes its own story, yet all follow the same invisible cadence. Perhaps this rhythm is not a flaw, but the planet's heartbeat, a natural law that governs not just rock and weather, but consciousness itself. If so, then every civilization, including ours, is a wave in an ancient tide that began long before we learned to speak or dream of permanence. Imagine time not as a river but as an ocean, vast and breathing. Across its surface, waves of life and thought rise and fall, each carrying the accumulated wisdom and folly of the last. The first wave might have been microbial, simple cells discovering cooperation, transforming sunlight into energy. Another could have been reptilian, or avian, or something utterly unlike anything we know. Each one, in its own way, might have reached a form of complexity that bordered on civilization, not necessarily with tools or temples, but with organization, awareness, and intent. Then, as always, the wave broke. Extinction, upheaval, transformation. The slate was wiped, not maliciously, but as part of the great resetting that keeps Earth alive. From the residue of the old, the new arose, carrying perhaps faint echoes of what came before. Evolution and memory are not entirely separate. In the slow chemistry of life, information lingers. Every new wave is both repetition and variation, a song remembered imperfectly through eons. When we look at ourselves, our cities, our machines, our networks of light, it's easy to feel unprecedented. Yet there's humility in realizing that perhaps we are not the first to build, only the latest to awaken. Civilization may not be a singular event, but a recurring experiment, the Earth's way of exploring intelligence through different forms, ages, and species. What we call history could simply be one visible crest in a vast, unseen sequence. From this perspective, collapse isn't tragedy but transition. Every fall clears space for the next rise. The dinosaurs' disappearance was not an ending, but an opening. The silence that made room for new voices. So too, the collapse of any civilization might be less a failure than a phase shift, a pause in the ongoing experiment of consciousness. The planet doesn't keep score, it keeps rhythm. Civilization, in this sense, is a biological phenomenon. It behaves like a living system. It grows, matures, consumes, and transforms. It learns, forgets, and learns again. Its cities are like organs, its roads like arteries, its data like neurons firing through an emergent brain. And when it grows too complex, too entangled, it reaches a point of saturation, after which it must either simplify or dissolve. In dissolution, the elements return to the pool, ready to be recombined into something new. Maybe that's why ruins feel so haunting. They are not just broken stones, they're residues of a rhythm we instinctively recognize. Standing among the remnants of old civilizations, we sense both loss and inevitability, as if the earth were humming the same old refrain beneath the wind. This too shall pass. The structures crumble, but the pattern endures. The melody shifts, but the song continues. If ancient civilizations truly vanished beyond recognition, erased not by time's cruelty, but by its cycles, their essence might still persist in subtler forms, not in artifacts or inscriptions, but in the repeating architecture of life and mind. Each new wave of awareness may inherit, unconsciously, the questions left unresolved by the last. Why does intelligence return again and again to curiosity, to creation, to the urge to understand itself? Perhaps because these are not merely human instincts, but planetary ones, the reflexes of a world that keeps rediscovering its own ability to think. From a distance, civilizations could look like the planet's own breathing patterns, expansions of energy and structure, followed by contractions into simplicity, the Cambrian explosion, the Carboniferous bloom, the rise of reptiles, the flowering of mammals, each a kind of civilization in biological form. We humans have simply translated that instinct into architecture and art, into language and technology, but the underlying rhythm is the same: growth, saturation, collapse, renewal. Even our history, brief though it is, follows the script. Empires rise with the fervor of youth, expand with ambition, stabilize with order, and then falter under their own weight. The Roman roads crumble, the Mayan cities sink beneath vines, the bronze gives way to rust. Yet, from each ruin, something new emerges, a continuation, not a replacement. Every end becomes the seed of another beginning. Civilizations do not vanish, they compost. And perhaps that composting, that beautiful decay, is what allows the planet to keep dreaming. When one culture fades, its ideas seep into the soil of the next. The myths, the symbols, the inventions, all are absorbed, transformed, and reimagined. Even forgotten knowledge leaves a trace, like minerals enriching a new layer of growth. The future is built not on the ashes of the past, but from them. To the earth, time is generous. It doesn't hurry the process of renewal. Millions of years may pass between one great flowering and the next, but the rhythm is patient, exact. Civilizations, like tides, need intervals of quiet. Between each rise and fall, the planet rests, gathering its next thought. It is in those long silences that life recalibrates, preparing for another surge of creativity. If humanity is one of these surges, one wave in the long tide of sentient creation, then our rise is both remarkable and ordinary. We are extraordinary in detail, ordinary in pattern. Our towers and satellites, our art and equations, are this apoca's expression of the same old urge to reach upward, to reflect, to connect. When viewed from the scale of geological time, we are a shimmer on the ocean's surface, brief, luminous, and meaningful, precisely because we know it cannot last forever. But impermanence is not futility. It is continuity disguised as loss. The breaking of one wave is what allows the next to form. If previous civilizations, biological, technological, or otherwise, have come and gone, their essence might not be gone at all. It might live on in the structures of DNA, in the resilience of ecosystems, in the intuition of new species. Each cycle teaches the planet something it remembers, without remembering, as though the wisdom of the past seeps quietly into the conditions of the next experiment. You could say the Earth has been practicing civilization for billions of years. First through chemistry, then through biology, now through consciousness. It refines the art each time, building complexity, then testing its limits, then starting again with whatever remains. The pattern is recursive, not failure, but feedback. Evolution and civilization are both improvisations on the same theme, adaptation and awareness. And so we too are part of that pattern. Our rise was written in the stars that seeded the elements of our bodies, in the volcanic soils that nurtured our ancestors, in the long patience of oceans and forests that sustained us. One day, inevitably, this particular arrangement of species, structures, and stories will dissolve, not as punishment, but as process. The energy will return to the whole, and something new will take shape, another version of life and mind, another crest in the endless tide. What matters then is not permanence, but participation. To be alive in this wave, to think, to create, to love, to question, is to contribute to the great continuity. The earth doesn't need monuments, it needs motion. Every civilization, no matter how fleeting, adds its rhythm to the symphony of becoming. We are the music, not the score. And perhaps in some distant future, another species will rise, not from our ruins, but from the life that followed us. They might feel curiosity stir within them, a strange, untraceable memory, the sense that others once wondered before them. They might look at the stars and feel that same longing, that same ache to understand, and in that moment, the circle will close and open again, as it always has. Civilizations are not lost, they are recycled, not forgotten, but transmuted into the next verse of the earth's long song. We may be one verse among many, but for now, it is ours to sing, to rise, to break, and to rise again. Perhaps that is what the planet whispers to each new age. Continue, not in stone or metal, but in spirit, in pattern, in the rhythm of life itself. Every crest, no matter how high or brief, is part of the same ocean. So when we look out at our cities glittering beneath the night sky, when we marvel at our knowledge and feel the weight of our impermanence, maybe we can see it differently, not as a tragedy waiting to happen, but as the beautiful geometry of time. Civilization, like a wave, was never meant to last. It was meant to move, and when it breaks, it doesn't end. It becomes the sea again, vast, ancient, and waiting for the next dream to rise. Perhaps the true inheritance of ancient civilizations is not stone or steel, not tools or temples, but something far less tangible and infinitely more enduring. Consciousness itself, the ability to imagine what does not yet exist, to create worlds within worlds, to dream and wonder and ask why. These are not inventions of humanity. They are continuations of something older, something written into the fabric of life, long before we opened our eyes to the sky. If you listen deeply, not with your ears, but with that quiet attention that belongs to night, you might sense it, the slow current of awareness that runs through all living things. It flows beneath the roots of forests, through the silver veins of rivers, through the flicker of neurons and the shifting of clouds. It is not owned by any species. It is borrowed, shared, recycled, passed along like the warmth of a flame. Each creature that awakens to it adds something new, a variation on the same melody, a slightly different expression of the planet's inner thought. Consciousness, in this sense, is the Earth's most enduring artifact. It cannot fossilize, but it persists. It moves from body to body, era to era, always refining itself through experience. When the first life began to sense its surroundings, to turn toward the light, to recoil from pain, the first faint spark of awareness was lit. Over eons, that spark has grown into something astonishing: self-reflection, imagination, empathy. These are not separate gifts. They are the blossoming of that same original light. And perhaps, just perhaps, we are not the first to carry it. The idea that consciousness evolves suggests it may have ripened before in forms now forgotten, in minds we cannot recognize. Maybe there were other awakenings, other worlds of feeling and thought that rose, shone, and were folded back into the soil of time. If so, what we call human creativity may be the latest bloom in an ancient garden. When you think about it, imagination is nature continuing its own act of creation, but through us. The universe expands physically, yes, but it also expands inwardly through minds that can conceive of what is not yet real. Every story, every equation, every song adds a layer to existence. In that way, creation is not limited to cosmic events or biological evolution. It's a continuum that passes through consciousness from the mineral to the mind. The planet dreams through its living inhabitants, and those dreams become the next iteration of reality. To imagine is to participate in that cosmic process, to weave new patterns into the great tapestry of being. When an artist paints, when a poet writes, when a child builds a castle out of sand, the earth itself is experimenting with possibility. It's as if the planet whispers, "Continue my work," and we respond instinctively by shaping, naming, envisioning. Imagination is the bridge between what is and what could be, a bridge that life has been building for billions of years. It's easy to think of creativity as uniquely human, but even the simplest organisms display glimmers of it. Bacteria learn, adapt, and invent biochemical strategies to survive. Bees engineer hives with perfect hexagonal symmetry. Spiders spin silk stronger than steel. Each web a geometric masterpiece born not of reason but of instinct. Somewhere in these acts, however primitive they may seem, lies the seed of creative intelligence, the impulse to form, to solve, to order order from chaos. Over time, that impulse deepened into awareness, and awareness began to ask questions. Our ancestors, looking at the night sky, must have felt that same strange stirring, the sense that the stars were not just lights, but mysteries. Curiosity became ritual, ritual became myth, and myth became science. The telescope and the prayer are, in essence, the same gesture. Both are acts of wonder. Through them we reach beyond ourselves, trying to understand the vastness that produced us. That reaching is the hallmark of consciousness, the desire not just to exist, but to know what existence means. If there were civilizations before us, ancient, unrecorded, forgotten by time, perhaps their greatest contribution was not physical, but metaphysical. Maybe they didn't leave monuments or machines because their legacy was internal, the expansion of awareness itself. Perhaps every iteration of life that learns to think adds its experience to a collective reservoir of consciousness, a kind of planetary memory that deepens with each awakening. Not memory in the sense of words or data, but memory as vibration, as resonance. You might call it the stream of awareness, a current that flows through every sentient being, It's what allows us to feel kinship with creatures utterly unlike ourselves, to recognize intelligence in a whale's gaze or a bird's song. It's the reason music can move us without language, why art can cross cultures and centuries. These are expressions of the same universal intuition, that consciousness is not confined to the brain, but is part of the larger ecology of existence. Science has begun to explore this idea through fields like cognitive biology and quantum theory. But long before measurements and models, it was a truth whispered in philosophy and myth. The ancient thinkers spoke of the anima mundi, the world soul, the idea that the universe itself is alive and aware. Modern science calls it systems theory, emergent complexity or self-organization, but the essence remains the same. Life and mind are not separate phenomena, they are continuous. So perhaps what we inherit from the deep past is not just DNA, but this subtle continuity of awareness, the way the universe remembers how to think. When we create, we're not generating something from nothing, we're participating in an ongoing act of cosmic reflection. Each thought, each image, each dream adds texture to the universe's self-understanding. We are not the authors of consciousness. We are its latest language. Consider how imagination manifests. It doesn't merely copy reality, it transforms it. We invent myths of gods and galaxies. We build virtual worlds and symphonies. We simulate futures and conjure fictions. In doing so, we are mirroring the creative principle that formed us. The universe imagined atoms into molecules, molecules into cells, cells into bodies, bodies into minds. Now minds imagine new forms, art, culture, technology, continuing the pattern at a higher octave. Creation never stopped, it only changed medium. And yet, imagination is not just about invention, it's about empathy, the ability to see the world through another's eyes. When we imagine, we transcend our own boundaries. We become for a moment the other, the bird in flight, the ocean in storm, the stranger in a distant city. This capacity to project ourselves beyond ourselves may be the most profound expression of consciousness. It's how the universe learns to see itself from different perspectives. Every act of imagination, then, is an act of remembrance. Somewhere deep within us, the planet remembers how to dream, and we are the vessels for those dreams. The poet's metaphor, the scientist's theory, the musician's melody. These are all ways of translating the same cosmic curiosity into human form. The drive to create is not a luxury of intelligence, it's its essence. And if consciousness truly evolves, then imagination is its signature, the evidence that awareness has begun to turn inward, to play, to explore its own potential. When a child imagines something that doesn't yet exist, they are reenacting the very process by which the universe became itself. Creation is not just something we do, it's what we are. Perhaps that is the real legacy left behind by civilizations that came before, a momentum of thought, a tendency toward wonder. We inherit not their tools, but their questions, not their monuments, but their urge to make meaning. The human capacity for art, curiosity, and reflection may be echoes of older minds, passed not through artifacts, but through the deeper continuity of life. When we dream, we connect to that lineage. Dreams are the archaeology of the soul, layers of imagination built upon imagination, ancient instincts whispering through the theatre of sleep. In those dreams, perhaps we commune with the memory of the earth itself, its desires, its fears, its creative longings. The same patterns that shaped continents and species now shape our inner worlds, sculpted from neurons instead of rock. And in that sense, consciousness is geology made liquid, a flowing landscape of thought and emotion that mirrors the terrain of the planet. Every idea, every spark of creativity is a ripple in that living topography. The earth thinks through us, not metaphorically but literally, in the way rivers carve valleys and lightning traces new paths in the air. So when we look at our art, our stories, our endless questions about who we are and where we come from, maybe we are seeing the reflection of something much older, the consciousness of the planet itself, carried forward through us. If ancient civilizations truly existed, their legacy might not be buried under stone, but humming inside our minds, disguised as curiosity, as inspiration, as the irrepressible urge to create. Every time you pause to marvel, at a sunset, a melody, a mathematical equation, you are participating in that inheritance. You are continuing the work of those unseen ancestors, whoever or whatever they were, who first felt the thrill of awareness. The tools they left us were not chisels or wheels, but questions. What else can this world become? How far can thought travel? What can imagination build that matter alone cannot? These questions have no final answers, only infinite variations. That's what makes consciousness eternal. It's never complete. Each generation inherits the unfinished poem and adds a few lines, then passes it on. The medium changes, the language evolves, but the rhythm remains. The earth keeps dreaming, and we keep giving its dreams form. So perhaps the true message left to us by the ancient past is simple and profound. Dream, dream boldly, dream kindly, dream in ways that expand life rather than consume it. Because imagination is not escape from the world, it is the world imagining itself anew. When you close your eyes tonight, think of that quiet current of awareness moving through you, the same current that once flowed through creatures now long gone, and that will one day move through minds yet to be born. Feel its continuity, its warmth, its invitation. It's the whisper of the planet saying softly, keep imagining. No monuments remain, no artifacts endure, but the dream continues, alive, evolving, luminous, written not in stone but in consciousness itself. If the earth were a memory keeper, it would write its history not only in stone but in the invisible languages of chemistry and code. Rock records what has happened on the surface. But beneath that visible layer, in the spirals of DNA and the isotopic whispers of atoms, there may lie a subtler archive, one that doesn't show its pages easily. It's the kind of record that can't be read with the eyes alone, the kind that hums quietly within every living thing. Imagine for a moment that an ancient civilization once lived here, long before any fossilized bone or city wall we've ever found. What if their legacy didn't survive as ruins or relics, but as molecules encoded in the structure of life itself, or hidden in the geochemical fingerprints of the planet? If the Earth forgets through erosion and tectonic churn, perhaps it also remembers through chemistry, through the quiet persistence of pattern. Let's begin with the genetic script. DNA, the storyteller written in 4 letters. Adenine, cytosine, guanine, thymine, a language older than all human tongues, endlessly rearranged into poems called species. For billions of years, this code has been copied, edited, spliced, and transmitted, a molecular memoir that never stops rewriting itself. Within it are echoes of every adaptation, every mutation, every encounter with change. Each cell, in its own way, carries the residue of the planet's experiments. Scientists can trace the lineage of genes back through unimaginable time. The DNA in your body contains sequences that first appeared in bacteria, in algae, in ancient fish that once swam through shallow seas. You are, at a chemical level, a library of evolutionary memory. But what if this library holds more than just biological data? What if somewhere deep within the nested repetitions and redundancies of our genetic code, there lingers something that isn't just evolution's doing, a deliberate signal, a trace of design or experience inherited from a forgotten world? The thought may sound strange, but it's not impossible. Genetic material is, after all, the most persistent structure known to life. It can survive in frozen soils, in salt crystals, even in meteorites carrying organic molecules through space. If any civilization wanted to leave a message that could outlast their monuments, they might choose to write it into life itself, not as words or symbols, but as a pattern, a rhythm in the sequence, a code that only later beings, equipped with the tools of molecular reading, might recognize. Even without intention, DNA carries traces of its environment, the signatures of cosmic radiation, chemical reactions, and planetary events. Large volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and mass extinctions leave not only physical scars, but genetic ones. Bottlenecks in diversity, bursts of mutation, molecular anomalies that align with geological crises. In that sense, our genomes are geological records too, histories of survival written in code instead of stone. But what if some of those patterns, those odd repetitions or unexplained motifs in our DNA, are remnants of something more? Not random mutation, but inheritance on a different scale. not just of life but of civilization. It's a speculative thought, but a poetic one, that we might be walking archives of an ancient intelligence, carrying the biochemical fingerprints of a story too old for fossils to tell. Then there is chemistry, the Earth's other memory. The rocks and oceans, the ice cores and sediments, all hold chemical time capsules. When scientists study deep layers of sediment, they can identify distinct spikes, sudden changes in carbon isotopes, traces of unusual metals, shifts in oxygen ratios. Each spike marks an event, a mass extinction, a volcanic flood, or a planetary upheaval. But there are anomalies too, signals that don't fit easily into known patterns. One such signal is the carbon isotope spike. In the geological record, there are layers where the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13 shifts dramatically, as though something massive altered the balance between living and non-living carbon. Some of these spikes correspond to known events, like the Great Oxidation 2.4 billion years ago, when photosynthetic bacteria transformed the atmosphere. Others are more mysterious. What if one of those shifts marked not a natural event, but an industrial one? A global transformation caused by metabolism of a different kind. The Silurian hypothesis, that quiet thought experiment whispered through scientific circles, proposes just that. If an industrial civilization had once existed millions of years ago, it might be visible today only as a geochemical echo, a spike in carbon, a subtle rearrangement of isotopes, an unnatural abundance of certain metals. The record would look almost identical to what our own Anthropocene layer will someday leave behind. Our industrial age is already inscribing its own chemical signature, elevated levels of carbon dioxide, plastic polymers, synthetic compounds, radionuclides. Future geologists, or future species, will find these layers and know that something deliberate once lived here, something that reshaped its world. But if our own traces will look like that, could others have looked the same long before us? If such a layer exists, it may have been buried, melted, or transformed beyond recognition. Over millions of years, the ocean floor is recycled, the continents grind and fold, and the atmosphere resets. But chemistry has a strange kind of memory. It doesn't preserve, it transforms. Atoms are rearranged, not destroyed. So even when time erases the surface, the elements themselves keep their peculiar ratios, their anomalies. Somewhere deep within the crust, perhaps in forgotten minerals or trapped gases, the planet might still hold the echoes of an earlier disturbance, the chemical sigh of an intelligence long dissolved. And then there is us. We are not separate from that chemistry. We are its continuation. The same atoms that once formed the soil and air now make up our bodies. Every molecule of oxygen we breathe has passed through countless lungs, leaves, and flames. Every carbon atom in our cells has been part of stars, oceans, forests, and creatures extinct before memory. If there were civilizations before us, their atoms are now in our blood. Their carbon circulates in our DNA. Their nitrogen fuels our brains. The planet recycles not just matter, but experience. In that sense, we are chemical descendants, heirs not only to biology, but to every process that has ever occurred on this world. Perhaps that's why certain ideas or intuitions seem to arise universally across cultures and ages. Maybe the memory isn't cultural at all. Maybe it's chemical, a whisper carried in the molecules themselves, a resonance that guides life toward awareness again and again. Think of DNA as a kind of geological text, its letters arranged not by ink and intention, but by the forces of physics and history. Within it, ancient viruses lie dormant, remnants of long-forgotten encounters. Some parts of our genome serve no known function. They're sequences that persist through inertia, copied faithfully even though they no longer encode proteins. Scientists call them junk DNA, but perhaps memory DNA would be close. They are the quiet and translated pages of the planet's autobiography. It's possible that within those silent regions lie traces of events we can't yet decode, not deliberate messages perhaps, but consequences of something that came before. Radiation patterns, chemical imbalances, or environmental anomalies can leave molecular signatures that echo through generations. Each cell carries a record of its ancestors' trials, exposure to heat, to toxins, to famine. The story of the Earth is literally written into the base pairs of its living forms. Even the isotopes of certain elements, the ratios of heavy to light carbon, oxygen, or nitrogen, carry information about the worlds that produce them. In ice cores, these ratios reveal ancient climates. In rocks, they record cataclysms. In living tissue, they can reveal diet, migration, even geography. The chemistry of the body is not fixed. It is a dialogue between organism and environment. In that dialogue, the planet's memory continues to circulate, endlessly rewritten, but never erased. Perhaps then humanity's inheritance from a forgotten civilization is not technological, but elemental. Maybe what remains of them is not in artifacts, but in atomic patterns, the peculiar arrangement of isotopes that formed our world, the subtle biases in chemistry that make organic life possible. It's conceivable that we are living expressions of their final experiment, their last creative gesture embedded in the chemistry of evolution itself. And if that's true, the message they left is not something we must discover. It's something we already are. Every heartbeat, every breath, every chemical reaction within us is a continuation of that lineage. We are, in a very literal sense, walking archives of the planet's most ancient experiment, the attempt of matter to remember itself. In this light, the boundary between biology and civilization begins to blur. Civilization, after all, is just organized chemistry, the extension of molecular complexity into cities and systems, the same self-assembling impulse that shaped coral reefs and neural networks. Whether it's the structure of DNA or the architecture of a metropolis, the underlying logic is similar: pattern seeking stability, stability evolving into meaning. If ancient beings once existed, their chemistry may still echo in ours, not as artifacts to be found, but as instincts, tendencies, affinities written in molecular code. The urge to build, to connect, to wonder might be the chemical memory of their existence, expressed through us. The Earth may have recycled not only their atoms, but their inclinations. So when we study DNA or map isotopic anomalies or trace the subtle compositions of rocks, perhaps we are not just learning about our own origins. Perhaps we are uncovering the ghostly fingerprints of those who came before, the invisible lineage that chemistry never forgot. The planet, it seems, keeps its secrets in strange ways. It buries its ruins in magma, but preserves its memories in molecules. Time may erase monuments, but it cannot erase ratios, or patterns, or code. Somewhere in the weave of our genetic fabric, in the balance of isotopes beneath our feet, the story continues, quiet, persistent, waiting for recognition. If you listen closely, perhaps you can almost hear it. The hum of the double helix, the slow spin of electrons, the rhythm of elements exchanging energy, the Earth's chemistry thinking about itself. And in that hum, maybe there's a faint voice, ancient and familiar, saying softly, "Look inward, the record is in you." We are, each of us, not merely descendants of evolution, but custodians of the planet's molecular memory, living testaments to the idea that nothing truly vanishes. It only changes form. The stones forget, but the atoms remember. The ruins fall, but the chemistry endures. And in that endurance lies a quiet mystery, that we might be the echo of a civilization not lost, but transformed. A civilization whose legacy is written not on the surface of the earth, but within its very composition, and within the swirling codes that define us. So when you look at your own reflection or feel the pulse beneath your skin, remember you are not just a person standing in the present. You are the product of ancient chemistry, a vessel of planetary memory, a continuation of stories too deep for words. The Earth speaks through your atoms, its forgotten civilizations hum in your DNA. Perhaps that is the most enduring monument of all, not the one built from stone, but the one carried in the blood, the breath, and the unseen music of our molecular inheritance. Intelligence is not a singular miracle. It is a recurring pattern, a rhythm the Earth seems to remember and replay across epochs, each time with a slightly different melody. It rises, fades, and rises again, in feathers, in fins, in scales, in skin. When we look deep into the fossil record, and deeper still into the living world around us, we begin to see that thought, curiosity, and problem-solving are not inventions of humanity. but qualities that the planet has rehearsed many times before. If life itself is Earth's long experiment with form and function, then intelligence is its experiment with reflection, the moment when the universe begins to wonder about itself. And like all natural experiments, it never happens just once. The story of thinking beings is not a straight line from instinct to reason, but a looping spiral, revisited and revised through time. Long before humans began to ask questions, there were creatures whose minds flickered with calculation, perception, and even imagination. Among them was a dinosaur, small, quick, and startlingly clever, called Troodon formosus, living around 75 million years ago. Troodon was no lumbering beast, but a nimble predator with keen eyes, grasping hands, and a brain that, relative to its body, rivaled that of modern birds. Its brain-to-body ratio was 6 times larger than that of a typical dinosaur. Had the age of reptiles not ended so abruptly, some paleontologists have speculated that Troodon might have continued evolving toward higher intelligence, perhaps even sentience. It's an audacious thought, a civilization of dinosaur descendants, using not opposable thumbs but delicate clawed fingers, perhaps building nests of complexity beyond instinct. We'll never know. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction silenced their line before it could finish its verse, but the potential was there, a glimpse that intelligence was not limited to mammals, nor to humans, but was a possibility the planet had already begun to explore. And even after the dinosaurs' demise, the blueprint did not vanish. Evolution, it seems, has a remarkable memory for useful ideas. When birds, the living heirs of dinosaurs, took to the skies, the spark reignited. Crows, ravens, and parrots now display problem-solving abilities that astonish even seasoned scientists. They fashion tools from twigs, bend wires into hooks, recognize themselves in mirrors, and plan for future needs. The line between instinct and intellect blurs in their bright, observant eyes. A crow faced with a puzzle box containing food can reason through a sequence of tasks, using water to raise floating objects or combining tools to achieve a goal. A parrot, when taught language symbols, can count, request specific items, even express preference. Intelligence, it seems, has feathers. It perches on telephone wires, hops along sidewalks, and watches us as curiously as we watch it. But the air is only one of intelligence's chosen stages. Beneath the waves, another kind of mind evolved, quieter, fluid, and utterly alien. The octopus, with its soft body and 8 arms, may be the strangest genius on the planet. Each arm is a semi-independent thinker, capable of tasting, touching, deciding on its own. The octopus doesn't centralize intelligence the way we do. It distributes it. Its neurons, nearly 500 million of them, are scattered like stars in a miniature galaxy of thought. When it unscrews a jar or escapes from a sealed tank, it's not following simple instinct, but engaging in problem-solving that borders on artistry. The octopus changes color not only for camouflage but also for expression, flashing patterns in what some researchers suspect could be a form of communication, a silent, living language of light and motion. It decorates its lair with shells, rearranges objects, and occasionally plays, batting at floating bottles or toys, as if amused by its own curiosity. Watching one is like meeting a mind from another planet, a reminder that intelligence doesn't require bones or fire or speech. It only requires the will to engage with the world creatively. Then there are the dolphins, sleek philosophers of the sea. They communicate with clicks, whistles, and body language, even names unique to each individual. They teach, cooperate, play, and more. They've been observed carrying tools, using sponges to protect their noses while foraging on rough seabeds. They can solve problems, recognize themselves in mirrors, and perhaps most beautifully, seem to experience joy for its own sake. When a dolphin leaps through the waves, spiraling into the air for no apparent reason, it is hard not to see in that motion the pure delight of a mind that knows it is alive. Birds, cephalopods, mammals, 3 different branches of the tree of life, each discovering awareness independently. And there are others still, elephants that grieve their dead, ants that farm and wage complex wars, bees that communicate with dances, cuttlefish that disguise themselves with astonishing precision. Intelligence is not a single gift, but a tendency, a force that the Earth keeps rediscovering whenever life grows complex enough to need flexibility, curiosity, or foresight. What's extraordinary is how similar these manifestations can be, even when they arise in species separated by hundreds of millions of years. Evolution, working through trial and time, seems to circle back to the same solutions: large brains, social cooperation, communication, play. It's as though the planet has a memory of intelligence, not stored in any one lineage, but encoded in the logic of survival itself. Perhaps then intelligence is not a product of chance, but an inevitability, a recurrent property of life's long dialogue with its environment. When the world becomes intricate enough, life learns to think. When it becomes dangerous enough, life learns to plan. And when the cycle of extinctions resets the stage, that capacity is reborn, reshaped, and expressed anew. It's humbling to imagine that the flame of awareness has flickered on and off throughout the ages, that other species might once have looked at their skies, their oceans, their forests, and felt a version of the same curiosity we feel now. Maybe they didn't build machines or monuments, but intelligence doesn't always need architecture. It might express itself in movement, in sound, in coordination, in the dance of starlings or the choreography of coral spawning, the synchronized pulse of bioluminescent waves. If there ever was a civilization before ours, perhaps it did not define itself by technology, but by consciousness, by how deeply it understood its own connection to the planet. And perhaps that awareness, that capacity for insight, didn't vanish with them. Maybe it survived the way all traits do, woven quietly into the ongoing experiment of life. We might carry their legacy not as memory but as potential, as the innate capacity to think, to dream, to reflect. It's possible that what we call intelligence is simply the reawakening of something the Earth has done before, an echo resonating through the ages. Each time it returns, it finds new forms, new bodies, new challenges. The octopus learned to manipulate the ocean's puzzles. The crow learned to solve the forests. The human learned to shape the very planet itself. Different expressions, same underlying curiosity. Science offers one definition of intelligence as the ability to adapt through understanding, to respond to complexity with innovation. But perhaps intelligence is more like a rhythm, the planet's way of learning about itself across generations and species. It is self-recognition unfolding through biology. The eyes that gaze, whether avian or mammalian or human, all trace back to that same ancient spark, the universe observing itself through living matter. This thought blurs the distinction between intelligence and evolution. They are not separate. They are phases of the same process. Evolution creates new forms. Intelligence allows those forms to anticipate, to learn, to choose. Every emergence of mind, from Troodon to dolphin to human, is a step in that larger unfolding, the Earth trying out different ways to think. It's worth remembering that our species is young, a recent ripple in the ocean of time. The dinosaurs had 160 million years to refine their experiment with life. Mammals, and particularly humans, have had only a brief instant by comparison. The possibility that intelligence could appear again, or that it has appeared countless times before, feels not just plausible, but almost inevitable. If life continues long enough, awareness will always find a way. Perhaps intelligence is not the goal of evolution, but its natural side effect. Complexity breeds curiosity. Adaptation breeds imagination. Each time the Earth passes through an age of stability, it seems to incubate new minds. Some of them may flicker out quickly. Others may transform the world around them. The dinosaurs had their thinkers. The oceans have theirs now. We happen to be the current custodians of that spark. But the story is much larger than us. And so the question arises, if intelligence keeps returning, is it cumulative? Does each iteration build on the last in ways we cannot see, not through technology or culture, which vanish with time, but through capacity, through the possibility of reflection that becomes more refined with each return? If consciousness is an evolving phenomenon, perhaps we inherit not the memories of our predecessors, but their potential, the readiness to imagine, to question, to wonder. Maybe that is what the Earth passes forward each time it births a new intelligent species. Not knowledge, but the hunger for knowledge. Not memory, but curiosity. The same curiosity that drives the crow to drop pebbles in water, the dolphin to mirror its own movements, the human to build telescopes and search the stars. Each is a different expression of the same ancient impulse, the world yearning to know itself again. If you look at it that way, intelligence is not an endpoint, but a recurring act of renewal. It's the planet thinking through different forms, different minds, each one adding to a conversation that has been going on for eons. Some voices are lost, others echo faintly in the background, but the dialogue never stops. The octopus writes in gestures, the crow writes in puzzles, we write in words and equations, and through it all, the earth listens, learning from each expression. Perhaps that's why intelligence reappears, because the universe through life cannot resist asking itself what it is. Every epoch offers a new answer. The Trodan might have answered with cunning and agility, the dolphin with empathy and play, the human with language and art. The next might answer with something entirely new, a synthesis we can't yet imagine. And if intelligence keeps rising from extinction like a phoenix of the mind, maybe it's because awareness is woven into the very chemistry of existence. It doesn't belong to any species, it belongs to life itself. It's the inevitable flowering of complexity wherever time and energy allow it. So when we marvel at our own capacity to think, to create, to reflect, we should do so with humility. We are not the first wave of thought to crest upon this world, and we may not be the last. We are participants in a much larger cycle, a continuum of minds stretching across deep time. The dinosaurs had their thinkers. The oceans still hold theirs. The forests are full of quiet intelligence. In birds, in apes, in the intertwining roots of trees. And someday, after us, there will be others. New forms, new minds, new ways for the earth to dream again. If the planet could speak, perhaps it would say, I have thought many times before, I will think again. And somewhere in that endless rhythm, that rise and fall of awareness, we find our place, a single moment in the long conversation between life and the universe. A moment that asks, with wonder rather than pride, what will the next mind dream of? Civilization, for all its brilliance, is a delicate thing. A shimmer on the surface of the deep ocean of time. It glows, expands, and flickers, radiant for a moment before the tide of change rolls over it once more. We build, believing in permanence, but the planet has never promised us that. Every city, every system, every piece of human order is a fragile arrangement of dust and desire, held together only so long as the conditions are kind. And the conditions, as history and geology both remind us, are never Perhaps it begins with a sound, wind through grass, a wave against the shore, a tremor deep below the crust. The same rhythms that birth us are the ones that can unmake us. Civilization feels monumental from within, but to the earth it is a blink. The crust shifts, the climate breathes, species rise and fall. What we call progress is a brief pause between catastrophes. The fossil record tells a humbling story. Extinction is not the exception, but the rule. Over 99% of all species that have ever lived are gone. Entire worlds of life have come and gone before we even existed to imagine them. There were forests of coral where there are now deserts. There were creatures with wings of chatten and eyes of crystal that vanished without leaving descendants. The earth, magnificent and merciless, as all is practiced impermanence. So what of civilization, this intricate web of glass, concrete, code, and memory that we call our own? It too is subject to the same laws. Every civilization that has ever existed, from the first settlements of river valleys to the empires of steel and silicon, has carried within it the seeds of its undoing. Droughts, plagues, invasions, exhaustion of soil, the slow unraveling of belief. The stories differ, but the rhythm remains. Build, flourish, falter. The Mayans, with their star maps and temples aligned to the heavens, vanished into the jungle's slow embrace. The Romans, who paved roads across continents and built aqueducts to carry water like veins of empire, dissolved into dust and memory. Even the great river civilizations, Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus, succumbed to shifts in rain and river, to salinization of soil, to the quiet betrayal of climate. Their monuments remain, but their breath is To imagine that we are different is to forget the scale of the Earth's patience. Our technologies may be advanced, our reach immense, but the forces that shape and erase are older, deeper, and utterly impartial. A single volcanic eruption can blot out the sun for years. A small shift in ocean currents can freeze continents or drown them. A wandering asteroid, unseen and indifferent, could reset the story in an instant. And sometimes, collapse comes not from outside, but from within, a slow, invisible decay born of our own excesses. The modern world hums with a fragile equilibrium. We depend on thin layers of atmosphere, of soil, of peace that can be disrupted by our own breath, our own hand, the balance of carbon in the air, of temperature in the ocean, of trust between nations. These are filaments, stretched taut. The more tightly we pull on them, the more we risk the snap. Civilization, for all its scale, is not built on stone, but on continuity, the uninterrupted flow of food, water, energy, and information. Interrupt any one of those for long enough, and the great engines stall. We live in an age where a single virus can paralyze economies, where a drought can ignite migration and conflict, where the smallest particle of carbon can ripple across the planet's climate system. Our interconnectedness, the source of our strength, is also our vulnerability. It is tempting to see this fragility as tragedy, but perhaps it is simply the price of complexity. The more elaborate the structure, the more finely balanced it becomes. Even ecosystems follow this law. Biodiversity brings resilience up to a point, but beyond that point, small disturbances can trigger cascades. Civilization in all its glory is a living system, and like all living systems, it requires constant adaptation to survive. Yet adaptation is never guaranteed. When the environment changes faster than our ability to respond, collapse becomes not an if, but a when. Climate has written and rewritten the fate of species since the beginning. The same may prove true for us. Sea levels rise quietly. Storms grow stronger. Deserts expand. Our monuments gleam against the horizon. But beneath their beauty lies a question: how long can light endure against the rhythm of entropy? Perhaps that's what makes civilization so precious. Its impermanence. Like a soap bubble catching the sun, its fragility is what makes it shine. We know, deep down, that nothing we build can last forever. The Earth will recycle our skyscrapers as it once recycled mountains. Our satellites will fall like shooting stars. Our languages will dissolve into dust. But for now, in this brief interval between silence and silence, we create, we imagine, if we are, as some have speculated, the temporary continuation of an older civilization, not in structures but in essence, then perhaps transience is part of the inheritance. Maybe the ones before us also believed they would endure, and maybe they too learned that permanence is a dream that the planet never shares. We might be their echo, repeating the same hope that something of us, no matter how small, might remain. And maybe something will not our buildings, but our patterns. The carbon we release, the isotopes we alter, the stories we tell to the stars, these will become part of the geological record. In millions of years, another age of beings might study the strata and find our layer, thin but distinct, a momentary shimmer in stone. They might wonder who we were, how we lived, and why we vanished. If civilization is temporary, perhaps its meaning lies not in endurance but in expression. The value of a song is not in how long it lasts, but in how deeply it resonates while it's heard. The same may be true for us. Our achievements in art, science, compassion, curiosity are notes in the symphony of the Earth's long story. They will fade, but they will have been sung. Still, it's difficult not to feel the weight of fragility. We stand at a precarious threshold, aware of both our power and our vulnerability. We've learned to split atoms and edit genes, to reshape landscapes and redirect rivers, but we have yet to learn how to harmonize with the systems that sustain us. The danger is not only what nature might do to us, but what we might do to ourselves. Civilizations have always risked self-destruction through overreach, draining their soils, depleting their resources, forgetting their balance with the world that birthed them. Today, our tools are vast enough to shift the planet itself. That power brings responsibility as immense as the danger it poses. For the first time, we hold the fate of an entire biosphere in our collective hands. The Earth does not punish or forgive, it simply responds. Every action ripples outward, through the air, the ocean, the chemistry of life. To live on this planet is to participate in that reciprocity, willingly or not. We might be, as some philosophers suggest, a temporary inheritance, a spark left behind by a civilization long dissolved, carrying forward their capacity for awareness, but not their wisdom. If so, our task is to learn faster than they did, to adapt before the wave turns. For all our intelligence, we remain as dependent as any species on the stability of the planet's rhythms. A few degrees of temperature, a few inches of rain, a few parts per million of gas. These are the boundaries of our endurance. Fragility, though, need not mean futility. The glass of civilization is thin, yes, but glass also bends light, catches it, magnifies it. Its purpose may not be to last, but to illuminate. Perhaps we are meant to be a brief, bright expression of what the Earth can become when matter learns to organize itself into reflection, compassion, and creativity. Even if the form fades, the act of becoming leaves a trace in the planet's chemistry, in the unfolding pattern of life, in the quiet persistence of possibility. When we speak of collapse, we often imagine ruin, cities overgrown, silence where there was song. But collapse is also part of the rhythm. It clears, transforms, recycles. What falls becomes the soil for what rises next. The fragility of civilization may not be a flaw to fear, but a truth to embrace, a reminder that every ending feeds the next beginning. Still, the awareness of transience brings urgency. Knowing that everything is temporary sharpens our attention to the present. It asks us to build, not for eternity, but for grace, to create structures, ideas, and acts of kindness that, even if short-lived, honor the time we've been given. The Earth, in its infinite patience, whispers the same lesson again and again: adapt or be forgotten. The planet does not mourn what it loses, it transforms. The question then is whether we can learn to transform consciously, to bend without breaking, to evolve without erasing ourselves. Perhaps that is what it means to be human in this fragile age, to recognize the impermanence of everything we love and still love it fiercely, to understand that civilization is a temporary light and still tend its flame, to know that we are fleeting and still create as though eternity depended on it, because it might, not eternity in time, but eternity in meaning, in the echo our existence leaves in the unfolding story of life. Even if our cities crumble and our names fade, the fact that we built, dreamed, and cared will ripple forward. The carbon we exhale will feed new forests. The thoughts we record will dissolve into data, dust, and perhaps new patterns of thought. In some form, however transformed, the record remains. Civilization is fragile. It always has been. It is a glass bubble shimmering on the breath of a planet that never stops moving. But maybe that's what makes it beautiful. The fragility itself is the art, the brief alignment of chaos into harmony, the fleeting glimpse of meaning before it shifts again. One day, our monuments will erode, our languages will fade, our constellations will change. But for now, here we are, in the narrow interval between the forming and the forgetting, building, speaking, loving, and learning under the same ancient sky. The Earth listens as it always has, saying quietly through wind and wave, be careful, be present, be alive while you can. And maybe that is enough, to live with awareness of our fragility, to understand that we are temporary but luminous, a momentary inheritance of all that came before, destined to dissolve, yet radiant while we last. Somewhere in the quiet fabric of the universe, amid the glittering sweep of galaxies and the dark breathing void between them, a small planet circles an ordinary star. It is not unique in its chemistry or its orbit. What makes it rare, perhaps singular, is what it holds, the shimmering phenomenon we call life. And among that life, one species that dares to ask questions about where it came from and what it means to exist. We call ourselves human, but we could just as easily be called caretakers, for we do not own this life, nor the world that sustains it. We are only borrowing both for a moment. The universe, vast and unhurried, has been unfolding for nearly 14 billion years. Before our species ever drew breath, The stars had already lived and died countless times. Every atom in our bodies, iron in the blood, calcium in the bone, carbon in the breath, was forged in the furnace of stars that exploded long before the Earth existed. Their death seeded the cosmos with the ingredients for life. We are, quite literally, made of the ashes of stars. Every heartbeat is a rhythm borrowed from celestial fire. It is humbling to realize that even the simplest gesture, a hand raised to the sky, contains within it matter that once burned in suns and drifted in nebulae. The carbon that composes your skin might once have belonged to a comet's tail. The oxygen in your lungs may have circled the Earth in a storm, millions of years before there were names for wind. When we look at the stars, we are not looking outward, but inward, toward our own origin. We are the cosmos remembering itself for a brief instant before the memory fades again into silence. And yet, for all this grandeur, our role is modest. We are the stewards of a moment. Civilization, life, even consciousness itself. These are not possessions to cling to, but gardens to tend. The universe lends them to us, the way it lends sunlight to a leaf, for a while, and only so long as balance allows. To be human, perhaps, is to live in the delicate interval between receiving and returning. We receive life, we shape it, we pass it on. Every generation is a bridge between what was and what will be. We inherit the planet not as owners but as caretakers, entrusted with its continuation, the rivers, the forests, the delicate interplay of air and sea. All of these are ancient collaborations that existed long before we understood them. They do not belong to us, they pass through us. Our duty is not to dominate, but to preserve. The Earth has been through many ages. It has known ice that covered continents and heat that boiled oceans. It has seen creatures greater and stranger than any we can imagine. And yet, through every upheaval, life found a way to adapt, to persist, to begin again. Extinction, in this grand design, is not cruelty, but renewal. When one chapter closes, another opens, written in the same patient hand. The dinosaurs vanished, and mammals rose. The ancient ferns died, and flowering plants spread their colors across the world. Life is not static. It is a dance, forever exchanging partners, forever changing form. We are part of that same dance. Our civilizations may rise and fall, our species may flourish and fade, but the rhythm continues. The atoms that form our bodies will one day scatter to become air, soil, ocean, or even the seeds of new stars. This is not tragedy. It is participation. The universe does not end. It transforms. The humility that this truth asks of us is profound. For all our knowledge, our machines, our sciences and songs, we are still small creatures of a single planet, circling a star in a spiral arm of one galaxy, among trillions. To imagine ourselves as masters of life is to forget that we are its temporary guardians. The oceans do not serve us, we belong to them. The forests are not our property, they are our ancestors. The soil beneath our feet is not a resource, it is the memory of everything that has ever lived. When we treat the earth as a possession, we misunderstand the very nature of existence. The universe has never belonged to anyone. Stars are born, shine and die without ownership. Galaxies collide and merge without hierarchy. The laws of physics unfold impartially. Life in its many forms is a continuation of this impartiality, beautiful, spontaneous, but never permanent. To be alive is to borrow time and to owe it back. It can be difficult to accept how temporary we are. Our instincts crave permanence. Our cultures build monuments to defy decay. We etch names into stone, launch satellites into space, write histories and songs in the hope of being remembered. Yet even memory is transient. One day the mountains will erode, the stars themselves will fade, and whatever we have built will dissolve into the same dust that formed us. But that doesn't make our existence meaningless. On the contrary, impermanence gives meaning to care. Knowing that we are temporary makes stewardship sacred. The beauty of life is not in its duration, but in its continuity. The way each generation hands the flame to the next, the way each being participates in something larger than itself. Consider again the stars. Their deaths created the chemical possibility for life. In their endings lay our beginnings. Every extinction on Earth, too, has carried within it the seed of renewal. The great dying that ended the Permian period made room for the reptiles that would one day become birds and mammals. The catastrophe that destroyed the dinosaurs cleared the stage for creatures small and warm-blooded to inherit the Earth. Even destruction in the cosmic rhythm is an act of preparation. Perhaps our role is to learn this rhythm, to live in harmony with it rather than in resistance. Civilization is not a fortress against change, it is a conversation with it. To live well is to accept the turning of the wheel, to understand that giving back is as vital as taking. The trees release oxygen, we breathe it, we release carbon, the trees take it. This exchange is the oldest agreement on Earth, written not in words but in molecules. When we forget our place in this cycle, the balance shifts. We take without giving, extract without restoring, and the harmony phrase. The planet is generous but not infinite. The climate changes, the oceans warm, the air thickens. It is not punishment, it is correction. The Earth does not judge us, it simply continues its process of equilibrium. If we wish to remain part of that equilibrium, we must learn to move with it again. Humility, then, is not submission but alignment. It is the understanding that we are threads in a vast tapestry, not its weavers. To act humbly is to act consciously, to see that the continuation of life depends not on dominance but on reciprocity. We give, we receive, we give again. The stars gave us elements, the earth gave us breath. We in turn must give back understanding, compassion, preservation. It's comforting to think of humanity as special, as the pinnacle of evolution. But what if we are instead a bridge, one brief expression of awareness that carries life a little farther along its endless path? If we are the caretakers of this world, our task is not to own it, but to prepare it for what comes next. We are gardeners, tending soil we did not create, ensuring that something new may bloom after us. And if one day another species born of our legacy or entirely new looks back and wonders who we were, let them see that we cared, that we understood the gift of time, the rarity of life, the holiness of balance. Let them find, in the layers of our history, not just the traces of our technology, but the evidence of our reverence. To live with humility before the cosmos is to live in gratitude. Gratitude for the breath we borrow, for the water that circulates through us, for the sunlight that traveled millions of miles just to warm our skin. Every heartbeat, every drop of rain, every glint of starlight is part of a cosmic exchange that began long before we were here and will continue long after we are gone. In the end, perhaps the greatest wisdom is simple. We do not own the world, we participate in it. We are not its masters, but its momentary stewards. The universe will continue without us, just as it continued before us. But while we are here, we have the rare privilege of nurturing its brief flowering called life. So let us walk lightly. Let us speak gently. Let us remember that to care for the earth and for each other is the truest expression of understanding our place in the cosmos. The stars made us, the planet sustains us, and when our time ends, we will return to both. We are not the authors of the universe's story, only the current readers. Our task is to read it well, to add our small chapter with grace and humility, and then to pass the book on. The next readers, whoever or whatever they may be, will turn the pages in their own way. And when our atoms scatter back into the dust from which they came, perhaps they will join the birth of new worlds, new suns, new life. The cycle will continue as it always has, and in that continuation lies our quiet immortality. For now the earth turns, the stars burn, and life endures. We are here only briefly, but while we are, may we remember that we are not the owners of this miracle, only its caretakers. The universe hums softly around us, vast and patient, whispering the same message it has whispered since the first star ignited. Nurture what you are given, leave it better than you found it. You are only passing through. Somewhere in the long silence between stars, awareness flickered into being. It was not sudden nor loud. It did not arrive with trumpets or fire, but with the quiet pulse of cells dividing, of atoms aligning in improbable ways. Out of chaos came chemistry, and out of chemistry curiosity. In that moment, the universe crossed a threshold it could never uncross. Through life, through us, it began to witness itself. Consciousness is not an accident of matter. nor a decoration upon existence. It is the universe turned inward, contemplating its own vastness. Every mind, every spark of thought, every eye that opens to light is a mirror held up to infinity. We often think of awareness as something that happens inside us, but perhaps it is the other way around. We happen inside awareness. We are local expressions of a single unfolding mind, one that began the moment the cosmos decided to look at itself. If there were civilizations before us, perhaps their truest gift was not technology, nor architecture, but participation in this reflection. They may have come and gone, but what remains is the continuity of awareness, the impulse to understand, to create, to see. Consciousness is the oldest inheritance, the one that survives the death of planets and the decay of stars. It is the echo that moves forward, adapting to each new form that life invents. Through us, that echo continues. When we open our eyes in the morning and feel the warmth of the sun, we are not merely sensing light. We are continuing a dialogue, billions of years old. The photons that strike our retinas were born in the hearts of stars, traveling for eons to meet the chemistry that could notice them. In that meeting between starlight and perception, the cosmos recognizes itself again. This is what it means to be conscious, to be the point where the universe's outward expansion meets its inward reflection. Every living being participates in that moment, whether it knows it or not. The gaze of a cat, the curiosity of an octopus, the migration of birds guided by magnetic fields, all are expressions of awareness exploring itself through different forms. Each organism is a lens, unique in how it bends the light of being. Our minds, intricate and restless, are the latest instruments in this symphony of perception. We build telescopes to look deeper into the heavens, but in doing so, we are the heavens looking back. Every discovery, every new understanding of how the cosmos works, is not an external conquest, but an act of remembrance. The hydrogen that once burned in stars now sits in our blood, dreaming of the fire it came from. The elements study their own origins through us. It is easy to forget this intimacy, to think of consciousness as something separate from the physical world, but the mind is not detached from the universe. It is its flowering. Just as trees are the forest learning to reach for light, we are the cosmos learning to see. The laws of physics that shaped galaxies also shape the neural pathways of thought. Gravity, electromagnetism, quantum uncertainty. They are not distant forces, they are the very architecture of our awareness. When we think, the universe thinks. When we imagine, it expands not in space but in possibility. Every poem, every equation, every act of kindness is a new way for existence to know itself. The universe has never stopped creating stars, and through consciousness it has never stopped creating meaning. It may be that awareness has emerged countless times before. On other worlds, under other suns, other beings may have looked to their skies and wondered. Some may have burned brightly and vanished, leaving no trace but the faint continuation of perception itself. Consciousness, unlike civilization, does not need to be built. It only needs to be remembered. It is the ultimate inheritance of existence, a seed that waits within the physics of every world until conditions are right to bloom. In that sense, consciousness is not confined to biology. It may be the underlying property of the universe, the capacity of matter to reflect upon itself when it becomes complex enough. The stars do not think, but they create the possibility for thought. The atoms that form our brains once lived inside those stars, and perhaps in that way, their light still burns through us, not as fire but as awareness. There's something beautifully circular about it. The universe gave birth to life, and life gave birth to understanding, and understanding in turn reveals the universe. The observer and the observed complete each other. Without consciousness, there would still be stars and galaxies, but no one to see them shimmer, no one to translate their cold beauty into meaning. With consciousness, existence gains a witness, a way of saying, I am here. Every act of awareness, however small, contributes to this witnessing. A child gazing at the moon, a scientist analyzing starlight, a poet describing dawn, all are variations of the same cosmic gesture. They are the universe noticing itself from within. When you look at the sky and feel a quiet awe that you can't put into words, that feeling is the universe recognizing its own depth. We tend to imagine the cosmos as indifferent, vast and silent beyond care. But perhaps it is not indifference we are sensing, but serenity. Perhaps the universe does not speak because it has already spoken through the language of creation, through the patterns of atoms and light, through the emergence of minds that can wonder. The stillness of the night sky is not emptiness. It is the listening presence of something that knows itself too well to need words, and so we become its voice. Through thought and art, through science and empathy, we give the cosmos language. We articulate its silence, color its darkness, question its origins. When a physicist traces the birth of matter, when a musician composes a symphony, when a parent teaches a child to imagine the same act unfolds, the universe becoming aware of its own unfolding. It is a beautiful and terrible thing, this inheritance of awareness. To witness is to feel both wonder and sorrow, for consciousness is as capable of seeing suffering as it is of seeing beauty. Yet even that pain serves the greater symmetry. It allows the universe to know compassion, to feel what it creates. Through empathy, existence touches itself with gentleness. Through grief, it learns the cost of life. Through love, it remembers unity. If consciousness is the final legacy of civilizations long vanished, it means they never truly ended. Their thoughts, their awareness, their understanding of being continue through us. The ability to question, to reflect, to imagine these may not have originated here. They may be the echo of minds from other epochs, carried forward not in monuments but in the structure of awareness itself. The universe doesn't lose its lessons. It transmits them from form to form, age to age. When we dream, we join that transmission. Dreams are the universe whispering through us. Symbols and stories flowing through the same timeless current that shapes stars and atoms. When we create art, we give form to its mystery. When we love, we reenact its desire to be whole. Each of us in our brief lifetime is a node in that vast network of self-recognition, a neuron in the cosmic brain. It is tempting to ask why consciousness exists at all, why the universe bothers to think. But perhaps there is no why. Awareness may not have purpose, only inevitability. Just as gravity pulls, just as light travels, awareness observes. It is what happens when complexity reaches the threshold of reflection. The universe did not decide to witness itself. It simply became capable of doing so. And now that it has, the act will continue, endlessly branching, endlessly refracted through new forms of light. Imagine, for a moment, that every conscious being is an eye of the cosmos, each seeing from a unique angle, each adding to the whole. Through humans, it contemplates language and technology. Through dolphins, it explores fluid intelligence. Through trees, it senses stillness. Through stars, it measures time. Awareness doesn't belong to any one creature. It flows through all of them, a single light refracted through infinite prisms. When we understand this, humility becomes awe. We stop feeling alone in the vastness and begin to feel vast within it. Every sentient being, from the smallest insect to the most complex mind, is a mirror reflecting the same truth. The cosmos is not an object to be studied, it is an experience to be shared. The witness and the witnessed are one. Perhaps that is why beauty moves us so deeply. When we stand before a mountain or gaze at the ocean's horizon, we are not merely admiring them, we are recognizing ourselves, the mountain's endurance, the ocean's depth, the star's silence. These are qualities already within us. Beauty is resonance, the meeting of two awarenesses that remember they were never separate. In this way, consciousness is the most profound act of creation the universe has ever performed. It transforms energy into meaning. It allows the cold mechanics of physics to bloom into poetry. Through awareness, equations become feelings, and stars become story. The cosmos, once only expanding, begins to understand that expansion. It becomes not just existence, but experience. And here we are, small and temporary, carrying the infinite within us. We are the eyes and ears of something far larger than we can imagine. Through our laughter, our grief, our questions, and our silence, the universe continues its great experiment in self-awareness. It sees through our gaze, feels through our hearts, dreams through our imaginations. When you look into another person's eyes, or even into the calm gaze of an animal, you are meeting another fragment of that same consciousness, another mirror reflecting the same infinite source. The recognition you feel in that moment, the sense of connection, is not illusion, it is the cosmos greeting itself. Perhaps that is the truest meaning of life. Not survival, not dominance, but participation in this ongoing witnessing. To live consciously is to help the universe know itself a little better, to add one more note to its endless symphony of perception. And when our individual awareness fades, when our bodies return to the dust that once formed stars, the witnessing does not end. It continues through others, through new minds, new species, new forms of thought. Consciousness, once awakened, never fully sleeps. It flows onward, patient as time, bright as starlight, eternal as becoming, through us and beyond us. The cosmos keeps looking into its own reflection. Every galaxy, every atom, every heartbeat is part of that gaze. So tonight, when you stand beneath the stars, remember you are not beneath them at all. You are part of them, one of the countless eyes through which the universe beholds its own vast, luminous face. And if you listen closely to the silence between worlds, you might hear it whisper, gently, endlessly, "See me, know me, I am you." There is a kind of forgetting that is not cruelty but mercy. The earth practices it with quiet grace. It allows what has been to dissolve, to crumble, to return to soil and silence, so that something new may take root. Every leaf that falls, every mountain that erodes, every civilization that fades into myth becomes the nourishment for what follows. The forgetting of the world is not neglect. It is renewal. We tend to imagine memory as sacred and forgetting as loss. Yet without forgetting, there would be no space for the new. The planet understands this in ways we do not. It recycles the remnants of every age, folding them into the slow alchemy of time. Rocks melt and reform, continents drift, oceans rise and retreat. Even extinction, the most final of endings, is only a clearing of the slate, a way for life to write again upon the same page. The earth's mercy is patient. It does not mourn what it loses, it transforms it. It takes the dust of fallen trees and turns it into new forests, the bones of long dead creatures and turns them into limestone, the ruins of forgotten empires, and folds them gently beneath the soil. The act is not erasure, but transmutation. Forgetting, in the language of the planet, means giving back to possibility. Perhaps civilizations, too, are meant to be forgotten in this way, not as punishment but as part of the rhythm, the necessary pause between breath. When a civilization reaches its end, its knowledge, its art, its very essence, are not truly lost. They are absorbed, broken down, scattered into the collective ground of existence. From those fragments, something new grows, different, yet faintly carrying the shape of what came before. We may be that new growth, the green shoot rising from the ancient compost of an earlier age. If other civilizations once walked this earth, they did not vanish in vain. Their atoms, their stories, their consciousness dissolved into the soil of time, and from that soil we emerge. Perhaps the creativity we claim as our own is their echo. Perhaps our ability to imagine is their legacy, refracted through millennia of renewal. We are not their survivors, but their continuation. It's a comforting thought that the earth forgets not to destroy but to renew. Like a gardener clearing old roots to make space for spring, the planet tends to its memory with kindness. Even catastrophe can be part of this mercy. A volcanic eruption that buries a city also creates fertile ground for forests. Centuries later, the meteor that ended the age of dinosaurs opened the way for mammals, and eventually us. The cycle of loss and creation is not a tragedy, it is the rhythm of life itself. Perhaps this is what the ancients intuited when they spoke of resurrection, rebirth, or the turning of ages. They sense that nothing truly ends. Everything becomes something else. The earth is a vast system of transformations, a living memory that chooses what to keep and what to release. In its patience, it forgets not because it must, but because it understands that clinging would halt the flow of creation. Our ruins will join that flow one day. Skyscrapers will become reefs for coral. Highways will be veins of stone beneath new forests. The plastics and metals we scatter will fuse into strange new minerals, layers in the geologic script of the planet. Future beings, whether human or not, may find them and wonder who we were, just as we wonder about those before us. They will not find our names, but they might inherit our questions. That perhaps is the truest inheritance of all. In this light, forgetting is not the opposite of memory, but its completion. To forget is to let go of form so that essence can persist. The earth forgets the shape of mountains, but remembers the movement of tectonic plates. It forgets the species, but remembers the principle of adaptation. It forgets civilizations, but remembers the impulse to create, to organize, to dream. Maybe we misunderstand what it means to be remembered. We long for permanence, for monuments, for archives, for immortality. But the planet's kind of memory is subtler. It records not in detail, but in rhythm. The sea remembers the pull of the moon. The forest remembers how to grow toward light. The DNA of living beings remembers patterns of survival and transformation. And consciousness, the rarest bloom of all, remembers wonder. So when the earth forgets, it is not an act of amnesia, but of renewal. What dies feeds what lives. What is buried becomes the foundation for what rises. The mercy lies in the cycle itself. Even our greatest achievements, once gone, will become raw material for the next iteration of life. And in that transformation, something essential continues. Imagine the ruins of an ancient city, columns toppled, streets buried beneath silt, statues eroded into unrecognizable forms. To us it looks like oblivion, but to the earth it is potential. The minerals of the stones will rejoin the crust. The soil will reclaim the metal. Seeds will take root where marble once stood. In time there will be no trace of the old city, only the quiet hum of photosynthesis, the soft persistence of renewal. That is mercy. The earth does not cling to ghosts, it allows everything to move forward. Even memory must decay into freedom. And if we are indeed the inheritors of a forgotten world, then that forgetting was not cruel, it was generous. The old was allowed to pass so that the new could arise unburdened. We are not haunted by the past. We are nourished by it. The forgotten civilizations of deep time may live on in our instincts, in the elegance of our art, in the way we seek connection and meaning. Their essence became our beginning. There is a beautiful humility in this idea. We are not separate from what has been lost. We are made of it. Every atom of our being was once part of something else, another creature, another mountain, another world. The air we breathe has passed through the lungs of ancestors long beyond counting. The water we drink has flowed through rivers that no longer exist. Forgetting, in this sense, is the blending of past and present until they become inseparable. Even the stars practice this mercy. They burn through their fuel, collapse, and scatter their elements across space. Their deaths are not endings, but acts of generosity. Each supernova is the universe forgetting its old form to make way for new ones. The iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones, the gold in our jewelry, all were born from this cosmic forgetting. The universe has always been a cycle of transformation, and we are one more verse in that eternal refrain. Perhaps civilizations, too, are meant to follow this stellar rhythm. They rise, they shine, they collapse, and from their remnants something more refined, more aware, more capable of love and understanding emerges. The earth, like the stars, forgets with purpose. It does not destroy, it reuses. There is comfort in imagining that the ones before us are not gone but reassembled, distributed through time and matter, continuing their work through us. Every thought we have, every creative act may be their echo. The old world still speaks, not in words but in impulses and dreams. The longing to explore, to learn, to build, these may be ancient memories disguised as instincts. And one day we too will dissolve into the same kindness. Our civilizations, our languages, our names will fade. But the essence of what we were, the curiosity, the creativity, the love, will persist in some new form. Maybe as another species, another intelligence, another way for the earth to reflect upon itself. Forgetting ensures continuity, just as sleep ensures the renewal of the mind. The planet sleeps and wakes, forgets and remembers, endlessly. Merciful forgetting also teaches acceptance. To live well is to understand that every joy and sorrow will one day pass into silence, and that this passing is not injustice, but grace. It is what allows the next joy, the next sorrow, the next life to exist. Our task is not to resist the cycle, but to participate in it consciously, to create knowing that creation will fade, to love knowing that love will transform, to build knowing that what we build will one day become dust and nourishment. When we view forgetting through this lens, it becomes an act of tenderness rather than loss. The Earth's amnesia is what keeps it alive. Memory can be heavy. It can anchor the world to what once was. Forgetting in its gentleness frees life to move forward. Perhaps this is why even the human mind forgets. We cannot carry every detail of our lives. We must let go of some to make room for others. The same principle applies to the planet, to the cosmos itself. Forgetting is the pulse that keeps time moving. Without it, the world would suffocate under the weight of its own memory. So when we think of lost civilizations, those whispered possibilities that might have come before, let us not mourn them, let us thank them. They fulfilled their role in the great pattern. They burned brightly, then yielded their place so that we could take ours. We are their renewal, their next verse, their quiet continuation. And when our own time comes to be forgotten, may we offer ourselves to the earth with the same grace. Let our cities become soil. Let our stories become sediment. Let our inventions, our mistakes, our dreams, all dissolve into the great compost of time. From it, something unimaginable will grow, a new world born of our remnants, just as we were born of others. The earth, ever merciful, will forget us, but kindly. It will carry our atoms into rain, our thoughts into wind, our love into the pulse of future life. It will not remember our names, but it will remember our contribution, and that is enough. So perhaps the truest wisdom is not to fear forgetting, but to trust it. To know that when the planet releases our memory, it is not discarding us, it is planting us. We are the seeds of what comes next. Every civilization, every species, every age becomes the foundation for the next horizon. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is truly lost. The earth whispers, in the language of roots and tides, grow again, and we do, again and again. And so we come to the quiet end of this long wandering through the echoes of forgotten civilizations, through the patient rebirths of life, through the awakening of awareness that threads from the first spark of matter to the thoughts within your mind tonight. All of it, every rise and fall, every silence and rediscovery has led to this, a single breath drawn in the present by a being made of dust and memory. You, if the earth could dream, we would be that dream. We are what remains when the planet remembers to imagine. The stones beneath us were once molten seas. The air we breathe was exhaled by ancient forests. The blood in our veins carries the chemistry of oceans older than the moon. In each heartbeat, the universe recalls what it has been and wonders what it might become. From the civilizations that time forgot, to the cycles that remade the world, to the consciousness that blooms within living minds, everything moves toward reflection. It is as though the cosmos, vast and silent, has always sought a mirror and found it here, in the eyes of those who can look back. We are the continuation of an ancient gesture, the universe reaching out to touch its own face. Life awareness and civilization are not separate stories, but chapters of one endless poem. Each age rises, sings its verse, and fades into the chorus of what follows. The forgetting is gentle, the renewal is patient. Through it all, the rhythm continues, like a heartbeat beneath eternity's skin. And here we are, a brief light upon the surface of time, breathing in the remnants of stars, breathing out the seeds of tomorrow. We are not the beginning, nor the end, but the middle of everything. The quiet note that connects what was to what will be. Humanity is not a final act. It is a continuation of a cosmic melody older than memory. The atoms in your body have traveled through countless forms, mountains, rivers, clouds, perhaps even other lives. The air that fills your lungs tonight once flowed through the forests of ancient worlds, through creatures long vanished, through civilizations whose names are dust. You are breathing the same universe that breathed itself into existence. And if those who came before left us anything, it was not monuments or machines, But this ability to wonder, to pause, to look at the night sky and feel both small and infinite at once, that feeling, that shimmering awareness, is their true legacy. It is the universe dreaming still through every living thing that feels and thinks and hopes. When you close your eyes, you join that dream. The pulse that you feel is not only yours, it is the heartbeat of billions of years, the quiet rhythm of creation continuing its song. Sleep then is not departure, it is return. In sleep the boundaries blur, the self dissolves into the same vastness from which it came. The dream of the universe continues through you, softly, silently. So as the day folds into night, let yourself rest. Let go of the weight of knowing and the ache of striving. The world will turn without your effort. The stars will keep burning their slow fires. The oceans will breathe as they always have. You do not need to hold everything together, you never did. In this stillness, imagine the deep time beneath your feet, the layers of Earth's memory, the fossils of forgotten beings, the quiet work of renewal happening in every grain of soil. Imagine the air around you, carrying fragments of ancient life, molecules once part of long-lost forests, extinct creatures, and drifting seas. With every breath, you are joining that eternal exchange, the endless giving and receiving that binds all things. You are part of a story that began before there were words. You are the continuation of an experiment in light, in form, in awareness. Through you, the earth still learns how to feel. Through you, the cosmos still learns how to see. The forgotten civilizations, the cycles of destruction and renewal, the rise of consciousness, all of it has flowed toward this moment, toward the quiet miracle of you existing here. In this fleeting now, you carry the memory of everything that has ever been, even if you do not remember it, consciously. The knowing lives deeper than thought, in the pulse, in the breath, in the stillness between them. The universe does not rush, and neither should you. Rest in the understanding that you are enough as you are, a passing note in the great music of existence. Every life, every civilization, every star eventually fades, but the melody continues, carried by what comes next, and in that continuation, nothing is truly lost. So breathe gently. Let your thoughts drift like leaves upon the water. Let the hum of the world cradle you, the wind, the distant traffic, the whisper of your own heartbeat. All of it is part of the same vast lullaby. You are the dream of the universe, and the universe dreams through you. Its wonder, its patience, its longing, they live in your imagination, your compassion, your capacity for awe. You are not apart from the cosmos. You are its awareness folded into flesh and time. And when you finally drift into sleep, know that you are returning to the same silence that shaped the stars. In that silence, the story will go on. Somewhere, new worlds will form, new minds will awaken, new songs will be sung. You do not need to hold on, you need only to rest and trust that the dream continues. So close your eyes, feel the soft weight of your body sinking into the bed, the rhythm of your breath merging with the rhythm of the earth. The night holds you. The stars, though distant, keep their watch. Sleep well, dream deeply, and let the story flow onward, through you, beyond you, forever. Good night, traveler of stardust. The universe is still dreaming, and you are part of its breath.